Hello and welcome to Artful Connections. My name is Yvette Hermann and I am happy to be with you today. We're going to gather some materials and spend an hour together making art. Hello neighbors, welcome, welcome. This is your lovely supplies list for what you need today. And happy Tuesday. Hope you're doing well. This is the fourth week of our virtual workshops that we're calling Artful Connections. I created a little backdrop to block out some of the light because fortunately it is sunshiny today. And I'm just making sure that you can all see pretty well. Welcome, welcome. Hi, Christine. Hello, neighbors, as you join me. I'm so glad you're here. I'd love to serve you a little snack. I'll share a little sip of water with you. Living in the Midwest, I've really learned to appreciate a mason jar. So today we're going to be making collages, which is just putting paper down on top of paper. Louie is really excited that there's water on the table. And we're just going to kind of scoot him around. He's just destined for my lap. All right. Excuse us. So the materials that you will need today are paper, scissors. I think that I'm getting hearts for Louie's butt. Something about a cat butt that you just love to see. So for paper today, you can use anything. You can use brown paper bags and cut those up. Legal paper, which is yellow. You could use loose leaf. You could use white paper, wrapping paper. Maybe you want to run around and gather some different colors of paper because that will make your collage look a little bit more colorful. So also, if you don't feel like using scissors today, you can just rip paper and you'll have really interesting edges to all of your shapes. And glue, which is also optional because if you don't want to glue things down and you just want to arrange them on your paper and then take a photograph of it, there's your art and it's done, and you can recycle that paper again or make it gift wrap or confetti. Yeah, I love to just recycle into nothing if it's possible. So those are just the materials that you need. I want to give you a minute to gather those. Hello, Emma. Hello, Amy. It's so nice to have you here with us. My plant wanted to join as well. This guy is an oregano. I like that spicy smell. This is good on pizza when it's dried. All right. So I'm going to do that centering thing where I ding the bell 3 times. Let's see. I'm going to set an intention to have an interesting workshop where I uncover something that I didn't expect. So right now I have music playing that's engineered to be 417 hertz. and that's meant to evoke kind of a dream state. Since we're not laying in bed, we probably won't fall asleep, but I was just hoping to have something that kind of brought to mind the kind of dreaminess that I hope comes out of our collages. And I got this idea from Eric, my partner. He suggested dreams, and I really liked the idea because they're so different for different people, and you get to choose which dream you might want to focus on today. So thank you, Eric, for that idea. Oh, thank you, Mom, for joining. So Mom in New York is going to be making her first collage today. I'm super excited. All right, so we're going to clear away our bell. Louis thinks that you should have your supplies by now, and he's just going to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. All right. And Louis, you're kind of like not choosing the best spot. Let's see if we can move you along. It's not very big, but it takes up a lot of space. All right. So we're going to use this time to welcome everybody to our virtual workshops, our Artful Connections. And I like this part of our ritual. I'd like to start off, first of all, by welcoming any pets or animals that might be in your space, in your home, in your neighborhood, the plants in your home, everything that's living. We welcome people, of course, of all genders, people of all ages, and animals of all ages. We welcome people who can communicate in more than one language. We welcome people who are immigrants or people who have ancestors who migrated. We welcome people who are survivors. We welcome people who like to talk and people who don't. We welcome people from all over the world, and animals and plants. We welcome people with loved ones who are locked up or far away. We welcome people who have struggles with their parents or caregivers or guardians. We welcome people who have family members who are not close to them, but still close to their heart. And we welcome the I can't say that word every week. We welcome the indigenous people of this land who took care of it for 10,000 years before us. They're welcome. And of course, we always welcome the artist in you. I firmly believe that we're all artists, and it takes time and practice to develop skill in any particular discipline. I do not have a lot of skill in collage, as you may or may not see today. But I have a little bit of experience, and I think it's something that is not a difficult thing to attempt and an easy thing to let go of if it doesn't come out the way you want it to. So we're welcoming other cats, particularly Otis, Venus, Uranus, Bryman, who's going to be making art today. So I'm going to get my materials together. I have them gathered before. This work surface is going to be a little challenging. What I did was I took some paper and I just ripped it up. Then I even took some art that I had made, and I ripped that up too. So I have these pretty pieces of paper that I can work with today. Probably some cat hair will get into this artwork, and that is just fine with me. All right, so I'm going to get my scraps all lined up, and then I have to choose what piece of paper I'm going to work on. So that would be just like a solid sheet of a solid color. I mean, you could just use newspaper as your background. That's a little busy for me. I think you might want to put newspaper down if you're going to use glue. But I'm going to get some nicer paper for my background. How about this piece of paper? Ta-da! Okay, Louie, my love, you are just like right in the middle of everything. tried to overfeed you and it didn't work. All right. So let's talk a little bit about like what goes into collage. You've got your materials. I'm going to put this right behind me in case anybody gets here late. No such thing as late when you're doing a virtual workshop, right? All right, so just some basic information, right? We're going to be working with shapes today, and I just put the 3 most basic that I could think of. What other shapes can you think of that might need to go on here? Like the stop sign shape? Let's see. Do shapes have to be things like squares and rectangles? I don't even have a rectangle on here. I made a real skinny rectangle. I'm going to try to do that stop sign shape. Well, a little bit of success. So I made my octagon. I think I might do a rhombus. Maybe a parallelogram. So those are pretty regular, like geometric shapes. But there's also things like what's that shape? Kind of like that last shape I came up with right there. So a shape is really anything that's got enclosed space, right? I could just make a line and do anything, and as long as I connect it together, I can even do like a cat head shape. This guy, he's just really bossy. He just thinks everywhere is his spot, and it's not bath time here. Okay. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so I brainstormed some shapes, and I just doodled a bunch of shapes to give you some ideas. And we're going to rip our paper into shapes. You can use scissors or you can rip. I have some pre-cut shapes here that I've made. But I'm going to continue to make some shapes with you. And you can experiment and see if you like ripping better or if you like using scissors. If you're using scissors, be careful. So while we're messing around with creating some different shapes on paper, I think it would be interesting to think about dreams. Like, I have to tell the truth and be like, I am one of those people who I feel like I don't dream, or I really rarely dream. And the science says that we all dream almost all the time. We just don't always recall our dreams. So what I have is maybe just really poor recall of my dreams, which I don't like because I think dreams are very cool. And I would like to have cool dreams that I share with people or that like give me insight into my life, or I usually just have like the occasional nightmare. But the dream world is so like unconstrained by rules. It can like pixelate, it can melt. You can start at the end and then end up in the middle and there is no beginning, or have just like characters show up for no reason. Things don't have to look real. Sometimes it's just like an impression that you get, or like strong like colors or images or a place that's really strong in your head. So that's a lot to ask you to think about. And I think we might even be able to think about making this like a daydream collage too, and think about creating something that's just really dreamy, and not based necessarily on reality. But if you wanted to do like really literal shapes, houses and a forest and a lamppost, you could certainly do that too. That would be amazing. I don't know what mine's going to come out looking like today. And I did a few practice ones that are on the wall behind me. Some of those are drawings, but I'm hoping that this is going to be a strong piece today. Yeah, it's okay if you don't remember your dreams. So then if you don't remember your dreams, just focus on daydreams as you're making your shapes, right? So you don't have to be having like really coherent thoughts about your dreams. Maybe you can think about maybe a dream that you've had more than once, or like what a real dream is for you, a real dream of like achievement or security. Last week when we talked about our values, I thought that was really neat that people had such different values. You know, we're all humans and we all need certain things to survive, but the things that we value, it's so important that we all have different ones, right? Like we can't all value everything, and we need people who are like really focused on the natural world, really focused on the health of human beings, or the health of the planet, or science-y things. You know, believing in truth and honesty, believing in the wilderness. I just absolutely love that. I've been thinking about that a lot this week. My number one value that I came up with when we did that activity last week was I just came up with the word relationships, and that's right back there. Can you see? Can I point to it? Doop, there's my giant finger. Yeah, so I worked on that a little bit. It's still not finished. It's got that weird white spots up in the corner, but maybe I'll end up collaging that in, because relationships really are about how pieces fit together. So I really respect everybody sharing their different values and not worrying about like if anybody would judge them for choosing this thing over that thing. Making decisions is a pretty tough thing we humans are tasked with all the time. Okay, so I have a bunch of blue pieces, and then I'm going to work a little bit on these pieces. I like the way I have like some rainbow on there, and I actually painted this with the idea that I would cut it up. I didn't want to cut up any of my other art, even though it's, you know, on legal paper or scrap paper. I just wanted to keep it for now. I think I'll make a nice long strip of this. So if you're focusing on daydreams, you can just think about like what would be that perfect world for you right now, because we're living in a world where we're definitely not happy with the overall condition. And escaping into fantasy and what if is kind of a cool idea. So I'm thinking we're going to spend like another 3 to 5 minutes cutting up shapes. And if you have to run away to get some more supplies, that's okay. Well, once I manhandled Louie, he certainly took a hike. Oh well, sorry dude. I'm glad we have our other animals around. Our human friends. They're a real comfort. My nephew, who's not yet 5, his number one value last week, or his top 3 anyway, included a frog that lives in his house. He's a little tiny frog, one of those frogs that's like this big, and he lives in a tank. Yeah. I think he also included TV. And that, I will not admit, is pretty high on my list of values. Because it really helps you pastime in a way that's not, you're not conscious of it. Okay, so I got some interesting strips. I have no idea what I'm going to do with strips of paper. I don't know if I need strips at all or not. I'm just going to cut things into interesting shapes. I'm going to try to like maybe rip some triangles. You can't do this wrong. And if you see a shape that looks interesting to you, wonderful. Probably can't do it again even if you tried. Oh, I kind of like that whole piece there. I'm gonna give it a low. You'll also notice if you're ripping like against the grain or with the grain of the paper. I think I'm feeling the long skinny shapes today. I don't know what that's about. Don't think that I succeeded in ripping triangles very well. That's triangle-esque, but not. Oh, that piece looked like a butterfly. So you're going to want to make sure that you have enough room around you to take your ripped paper and push it off so that you can look at your blank background and decide where things go. We're still going to rip, rip, rip a little bit more. How's your day going, Stephanie? Hi, Eric. So these dream collages really could be any kind of collage. They don't have to be of dreams. But I always like to have an idea instead of like, just do whatever you want. But that idea is always there as like a diving board. But once you dive in, you let it be yours. You figure out your way. Right. I have these two types of paper. I wonder if I should bring in a third type of paper. I'm going to just adjust this camera so you can see my work surface a little better. There we go. I'll hold stuff up for you. I like these. So now here's my blank piece of paper. Before I start getting like, how do I start? How do I do this? We're going to do some exercises, right? Like not push-ups and sit-ups, but we're going to do some arrangements of paper that we're not going to keep, just to play with some ideas. So this first idea, and I need to give credit where credit is due. I got this idea from Barbara Ellman at Lincoln Center Theater. They're doing pop-up classrooms, and these vocabulary words came from her lesson. That was about 2 weeks ago, so you could check that out. Isolated. Well, that's a word we're kind of familiar with these days, right? We're going to take the bad connotation or idea that we get from the word isolated, and we're going to just let it mean what it means. If something's isolated, it's separate from other things in space. So take some pieces of paper and just work on a composition that's isolated, which means that your pieces are not touching each other, right? So if I'm working on an isolated piece, the stuff that I'm putting down, here, let me just show you right there. So this piece is isolated, and my pieces that are next to it, get rid of all this background. These are all isolated in space. As soon as I do that, that's not isolated, right? So they're just not touching. They're all in space. So we're just gonna mess with putting some isolated shapes on there. None of them will touch each other. And you're not worrying about dreams or anything right now. You're just experimenting with like, how can I put some pieces down that are all isolated? You can decide if they should be really far apart from each other. I mean, you can just put one piece of paper down and say that's isolated, and you're right. Totally. The challenge might be to crowd up your paper. And there really is cat hair on my paper. Okay, so here is my example. I'm going to move the camera of isolated shapes. So nothing's touching. It looks kind of spotchy, right? When everything's isolated, it sort of looks, I don't know, it's missing something. I want to connect the shapes. So now that I messed around a little bit with doing isolated shapes, now I want to try tangent shapes. So I'm going to pick a few pieces of paper. And when we say tangent, we mean they're like this. Just touching. Just touching. If we do this, that's not just touching, right? That's overlapping. So tangent pieces, just touch, and you can decide wherever it is they touch. So I'm going to make all my pieces touching, tangent. I'm thinking a little bit about my like daydream idea, and I think that I might want to do a place that I make up, and that helps me maybe think about how I'm going to arrange my shapes. If I do a place, like an outside place that's called a landscape, I would do a lot of different horizontal lines to show like the surface of the earth and the things that are on top of it. So that might be an idea for me, to do a landscape, to do a dreamy landscape. Now I'm just arranging my little papers in tangent and touching. Right, so they're just, edges are just touching. I'm going to use some that I cut with a scissor because those are easier, or they look different. They have a nice hard edge. I like mixing the hard and the rough. Tangent pieces. All these pieces are tangent. This one's just isolated, so I have to move it just to play around with what it looks like if they're tangent. I'm going to tell you that this feels good to me, this composition. It feels better than the isolated composition because that one, it didn't look visually interesting at all. But this one with the tangent pieces seems to have like, there's a flow, there's energy that can move between the shapes. And there's also like, it could be like pieces of a machine that like barely touch. It just has this sort of motion that's happening. I'm not really happy with my composition. I don't think I've done anything super duper. But I am going to pick up that camera and just show you what my tangent stuff looked like. And it's better if I pick it up with this hand than this hand. Right, so we're just going to look at those tangent shapes. There's a lot of shadow on there. Okay, so I just did all of my tangent shapes, I did my isolated shapes, and there's one other type that I'd like to practice. So Can you guess what it is? They can either be alone in space, they could be just barely touching, or what else? You've already accidentally done it. Overlapping. So now we're just going to mess around with the composition where everything overlaps. It could just be a tiny corner, it could be a big part, but each piece will have to overlap. Right? So we've got this piece right here is isolated, and then if I bring this other piece over here, ooh, tangent, and then overlapping. Yeah, it's great if you're coloring or doing any kind of art you're doing. It's okay if you're doing your math homework. It's okay if you watch the rest of this later. Yeah, I think I like the idea of maybe doing a landscape, a dreamy landscape from my collage. And now I'm overlapping all of my pieces, and I'm discovering I can do things like I can decide if something goes over or under. So I have this strip right here, and it's going over this piece and then under this piece, and I'm going to put it over this piece and under this piece. So I almost made like a little weaving. Just experimenting with what happens when all of my shapes overlap. Does it get really busy? Does it get I like the depth that it brings to it. This is a pretty tough shape I made for myself. That's like, if that's not some kind of spiky plant, I don't know what it is. All right, so I have overlapped everything, and I think when I move the camera, you're not getting a lot of really good visualness from it. But as you can see, all of these pieces are overlapping right now. They have a lot of life on the paper because there isn't any glue left, or I haven't used glue yet. Okay, so we experimented with these 3 different types of shapes, right? We can overlap, we can touch or be tangential, or we could be isolated with all of our shapes. So now this is the time when we just create, and I'm going to start with a blank piece of paper, and I'm going to work on creating my collage. Mine's going to be a dreamy place. It's going to be relaxing and safe. I really like how you can put things behind in collage. It's something that you can't do when you're coloring. It's a little bit like layers in Photoshop or Illustrator. Or you can send something to the back, you can bring it to the front. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm wondering, how am I going to glue this down? Am I going to put glue on the whole page and then put all the pieces down, or am I going to glue them one at a time? I could do either. So I'm interested to see, for sure, whatever kind of collages you come up with. And I think it would be really cool if you took photos during the process, right? So let me do that right now. I'm going to take a picture of mine. It's not finished, but this is called process work. Yeah, just the beginning. No need to be impressed yet. It does look kind of interesting in a photograph. It looks more interesting than it looks on the table. It's interesting. I'm thinking about dreams and what they are. I had a small conversation with Eric about it this morning, and he said that dreams are kind of your brain's collage, or could be. And an idea, a comparison, a metaphor could be that your brain is taking all of these bits and pieces, and your subconscious sort of goes, I don't like all these bits and pieces everywhere. I'm going to put it into some kind of story or dream. I'm going to play it for you while you're sleeping. And it's just this collage of like everything that went through your head that day or went through that week. The science of dreams has got to be pretty interesting and probably pretty frustrating. They have like dream guides on the internet where you can look up what your dream means. I don't think I believe those, because I really think that dreams are pretty individual. Like they're created by your body for your brain, and really no one else can see them. So it's kind of like, how can we decide what the rules of dreams are if they're all so private, right? Well, I've got to say, even though I look busy here, I don't really know if I'm happy with what I'm doing. It looks kind of jumbly. I think I need to start in one corner and move out. But let me take a picture of this, because it's progress in some kind of direction, right? Maybe this blue belongs closer, more at the top of my composition. Give ourselves this ultra blue sky. Sky, right? In your dreams, sky could be water. Could be rainbows all the time. Depends on what dreams too, right? I don't want this as part of my sky. This shape keeps showing up. I'm gonna let it just hang out over here. And now these pieces are like curling, and I think I like that sort of energy. Maybe I won't even glue those down. Like, I'll leave the edges curled up. Real messy kind of art. I really love art that invites you to touch it. I mean, sometimes you're not allowed to. What are those sunflower seeds that are made of porcelain that the Chinese artist Wei Wei made? W-E-I-W-E-I. He filled the Tate Gallery, or the British Museum, the Tate Gallery in the British Museum, with millions of these sesame seeds that had been handcrafted by artists and painted to look exactly like sesame seeds. And the Des Moines Arts Center has some. I would say they have a pile like yay big. And I want to touch that stuff so bad that I have to like stand 4 or 5 feet back because I feel like I might just like plunge my hands in it. It just looks so touchable. Okay, my sky is maybe taking shape now. Get some rainbow out of the way. So it looks like I'm really leaning towards the overlapping part for my sky. I want lots of these shapes overlapping. I like how this blue paper, when you rip it, is white on the inside. So I'm wondering if you're struggling right now, if you're like, how do I do a scene from my dream? It's like it's too hard to recall that stuff. Or if you're like, oh, I'm going to do that part of my dream where I open the refrigerator door and there's unicorns inside. Hi, Lisa. I think we got a few teachers and school folks online. I hope you are doing okay. I know we're all really struggling with expectations that we have for ourselves while we're working from home. And it's really hard to be isolated, but still trying to connect, still trying to overlap, right? You know, we're like this, and we're trying to figure out how to get between that space. And without school, it's really hard to connect with young people. Their parents are really busy trying to make a living and keep a roof over kids' heads, and I'm hoping that kids are offering a lot of help while they're home. I know I would be sleeping until noon or 1, which some teenagers are doing. It's good for their bodies. Well, this landscape is turning into a place that's a little bit scary. It's got a lot of upward movement, and I'm wondering, like, I don't know if it's possible for me to glue this down, but that's okay because I can just take a photo and it will exist in one piece that way. I'm feeling a little bit more at peace with my choice to do a landscape here because it's not going to look like anything on Earth. Anybody want to share what kinds of stuff is keeping them sane at home? What kinds of things? Are keeping you, you know, obviously together enough to be on Facebook Live? I think for sure my cat. 99% of the time, it is lovely to have him in my space and take over the warmest part of me. You know, that sounded weird, but cats like to be warm. All right, I think I have my sky. If I push this camera back just a little bit, you can see it a little bit. And it's just that crinkly sky. I'm going to work in some of this other color. And if you're putting stuff down and you go, oh my gosh, that looks like a fish, cool. Like maybe you want to follow that idea and just make it like a fish in a fishbowl and create an environment around that. What I really like to say about visual art is just there's no wrong way. Obviously, if you are a trained visual artist, there is a wrong way to paint. There's a wrong way to collage. Probably has to do with like sloppiness or not being mindful of the way pieces of the art work with it itself. I don't know. But at my level, art is successful if you make it, if you just do it, right? Because right now, like, I'm not watching the news, I'm not freaking out over what's going to happen in May or June. I'm just kind of struggling with little pieces of paper and figuring out a visual arrangement that works for my eye and my brain. Well, I suppose if you were really confident, you could put glue down and then drop paper on top of it. That would have like maybe a randomness to it. And you'd probably have to build up lots of layers if you were being random. But that's one way to do it. I think if I were a real collage artist and I wanted to glue this down after I laid it out carefully, I would really struggle. I'd have to take off all the pieces of paper and try to get them back in the right spot. But I'm not entering this in an art contest. So it's just interesting to kind of observe those things that your brain notices as you make this. It's sort of like, what could be the next step? Is this the best way to build this? And I'm pretty happy that I've chosen not to glue this down. Now I feel free and I'm just kind of working with the paper like it's confetti. Filling up the white spaces. I think it's time for another picture. This one looks better on the camera, maybe. It's still not done yet, though. I'll tell you, every single piece of paper here is not isolated or tangential. They are all overlapping. I notice I keep touching my face. I'll sanitize my hands right after I finish this. So you can kind of see a little bit of how my work is going. I'm going to tilt the camera just a little bit. You can see that it's thick and you can see my scissors really well. Yeah. A videographer with a tube camera setup would be wonderful if I could have that. But not for me today. I used to want a personal paratrooper in a helicopter too. I just think that would really help with traffic and getting out of things, right? If somebody just like comes from a rope out of a helicopter, you have to leave, right? You're like, I gotta go because I just gotta go. I always thought that would be an excellent way to get around. Okay, so I just took a photo of this and I'm going to show it to you, and you'll have a microsecond to see what you think. So I'm going to come up with a title for my place that I just took a photo of. And in the last 8 minutes that we have, I'm going to do one other quick collage with my papers. I'm going to try to mix isolated and overlapping and tangent shapes. I like the over-under thing. Oh, this guy will get a chance to be a hero in here. I'm thinking now about lucid dreaming, which is supposedly a way that you can control your own dreams. I say that skeptically. I think I might believe that it's possible. I think it would probably take a lot of practice. And you're never really sure if what you did is on purpose or your brain just doing exactly what it wants to do without your input. But lucid dreaming involves meditating on something that you want to dream about before you go to sleep. And that it makes sense that that would put your brain in a state where it's receptive to using those things in your dreams. But what I'm doing in this collage is kind of like a lucid dream, right? Like I'm putting together these elements of my dream very purposefully and mindfully. And I don't feel like the few dreams that I do have, I feel very out of control in my dreams. I never have those like masterful, I've got this kind of dream. It's usually like, what's happening and I can't get out kind of thing. So I like this composition method is kind of helping me feel a little more empowered. I'm creating my own daydream right here with my shapes. I'm wondering what your shapes look like. If you ripped or if you used scissors or both, and what kind of materials you used. I wish I had a brown paper bag. I think brown would look nice in this, but that's okay, because I can do this again and again. I'm using these as kind of like stalagmites. They're growing up from the ground. A stalactite grows down from the ceiling. So mine are I'm gonna give myself a stalactite. Why not? One from the top and then some from the bottom. The ones from the top are formed by dripping. That water that's full of minerals drips. And then the ones from the bottom are the dripping onto the ground that piles up the sediment and makes these beautiful towering things in caves. Yes, I'm going to redo this in brown because I have just decided that this is a dream cave with lots of rainbow stalactites and stalagmites. They're usually pointy at the end because of that dripping. My gosh, that hour kind of flew by. Time flies when you are making art. Thanks for the thumbs up, friends. Please, please, please take pictures of your stuff because I know it's going to be really cool. And I'm just getting into this and just feeling a little bit proud that I might make something that's interesting. Okay, Cave of Dreams. Let's see. My Cave of Dreams. Oh, yeah, it's my Cave of Dreams sideways because it will flip each time that you look at it. Yeah, but snap your photos of work in progress. Like, snap a photo of a blank piece of paper if you're like, this was frustrating, I hated it. I will post that on my personal page for sure, but any artwork we would love to post on the Artforce Iowa page. Thank you so much for being artful today. Thank you for being our neighbor. Artforce is going live with different artists Monday through Friday, 11:30 Central Time. So you can check out some guitar playing, some woodblock carving, some amazing sketching, illustration, and painting. We've got capoeira. Next week, I'm going to do some set design with you, and I'm super excited about this. I'm a theater artist, and I'm not a set designer. I'm mostly like a actor, director, choreolaborator, behind the scenes type of person also. So set design will be miniature. It should be really cute, really fun, and it's like almost like creating a tiny little puppet theater. So for sure, bring your inner child next Tuesday when you hang out for Artful Connections. My mom finished her artwork and she can't wait to show me. I'm super excited. I think Amy's gonna send us some stuff too, maybe Eric's family, maybe Holly. So all of you wonderful people, whether you're watching this later or now, I appreciate you. I'm glad you're my neighbor. Stay safe and hang in there. You are loved.